Welcome, everybody. Hi, this is Harrison Klein from the World Intuition Summit, and I've got something extraordinary for you tonight because this is the go-to guy for information as far as I'm concerned on the planet. Today we have an interview with John Demartini, and Dr. John Demartini, and I met John back around 2006, 2007 at my first Internet Wealth project that I did, and he's appeared with us multiple times over several of our projects and several of our summits, and you know, we've become friends, and I really appreciate that. So you know, I adore John. I adore everything about him. I adore his brain. I adore what he does. I adore who he is, and he's been a big impression on me for most of my life, at least in this world. And as far as I'm concerned, he's really the go-to guy concerning wealth, business, awakening, breakthroughs, all kinds of things. I know of no other person I'd like to really commune on with anything rather than, certainly as far as physics and philosophy and business and everything that is John. So John is one of the teachers featured in the inspirational movie The Secret, and his program really explores very, very diverse topics. He's a philosopher, and he's ranged all the way from sacred healing of ancient cultures to cutting-edge personal development technologies. He's been in this business for, I bet, over 35 years or so. And he's a best-selling author of Count Your Blessings, You Can Have an Amazing Life in Just 60 Days, The Healing Power of Gratitude, and Love and Breakthrough Experience, a revolutionary new approach to personal transformation. I know he's done many, 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 many extraordinary books that I'd love you guys to explore because, you know, reading this is really an illumination. Two of his most popular workshops include the Breakthrough Experience, which I've taken, and the Demartini method. So diagnosed with a learning disability when he was young, John was really told that he would never read, write, or communicate. It's a fascinating story. And he dropped out of high school to be a surfer in Southern California and Hawaii. The idea of leaving high school to become a surfer is kind of a very unusual one with his parents' approval. So for many years he had a successful chiropractic clinic. He was named Chiropractor of the Year. He's a doctor, philosopher, author, top inspirational speaker. I've seen him speak many times. He consults other health professionals and speaks and writes on the subjects of personal transformation. His teachings really are on the power of unconditional love, very much like mine are, and he has reshaped all of psychology. And these revolutionary methodologies continue to transform the lives of millions around the world, and I know he's going to have some really great stuff for us today. So I wanted to say, welcome, John. Hey.
Well, thank you, Harrison. This is, I'm looking forward to this hour together.
Me too. So really, let me launch into a couple of things with you, John. I began to give a little excerpt from your historical process here as you've come to be the John Demartini you are today, and the fact that, you know, you dropped out of high school and some things. But, you know, there is unequivocally no doubt that you are a genius in so many multiple fields, and you know, the stories abound, and the incredible information that you have shared with people around the world has changed so many lives. Tell us a little bit about what brought you into the place of where, you know, you have mastery of so many different things at this point.
Harrison, I just love learning, and because I was told probably in first grade that I would never read or write or communicate, never amount thing, never go very far in life, and because I had kind of dropped out of school and hang on the streets a little bit, and didn't read really till I was 18. That's when I first started to actually attempt to learn to read. I had speech impediments and dyslexia and many problems. And then I met, as you probably remember, Paul Bragg when I was 17, almost 18. And one night, this one man with his one message got to me and inspired me after about an hour presentation. And he made me believe that just maybe, possibly, I could be intelligent and I might learn how to read. And that was the turning point. That's when I decided that night that I wanted to learn how to read, I wanted to be intelligent, I wanted to be a teacher because that's what I thought an intelligent person was. And I loved traveling. I wanted to travel the world and teach. And I wanted to do what this man had done for me that night with as many people as I possibly could. So I had a dream that night to step foot in every country around the world and just basically travel the world and research and teach. So that's what I do. That was 42 years ago, and I've been doing it ever since. And I went back from there shortly to Texas, where I was born, and tried to take a GED, and I somehow guessed and passed. I tried to go to college, and I guessed and passed the entrance exam, and then I took my first class and I failed, and I almost gave up on the whole thing. And luckily, my mom saw me crying in the living room because I'd really, really failed bad. I just didn't get anything right almost. She said, "Son, whether you become a great teacher and travel the world like you dream, or whether you go back to ride big waves in Hawaii, or whether you return to the streets and panhandle as a bum, I just want to let you know that your father and I are going to love you no matter what." And when she said that, my heart opened. My hand went into a fist. I saw the vision that I met when I met Paul Bragg that night of me traveling and teaching. And I said to myself, I'm going to master this thing called reading and touch and study and philosophy, and I'm going to do whatever it takes, travel whatever distance, pay whatever price to give my service of love across the world. And I went back to my room. I hugged my mom, went back to my room. I started reading a dictionary and memorizing 30 words a day until my vocabulary grew. And shortly after that, my mom was blessed to, she asked me what I want for Christmas and for Thanksgiving that year. And I said, I want the greatest teachings on the face of the earth, the greatest writings that ever could be found. And she luckily had a brother who was from MIT who sent 2 giant 6 by 6 by 6 foot wooden crates of books of every discipline down to our house, and I filled my room with them, and I just started 18 to 20 hours a day, just started devouring and learning how to read. And I've had a dream to understand every discipline and read at least 75 to 100 books in every known discipline. And so I've done that. I'm now 287 disciplines. And I wanted to study the universal laws, the thing that was common to all things, to build a foundation for my philosophy. So I'm a neurotic reader and a student, and I like sharing whatever I discover and trying to help people live more magnificent, inspired lives and expand their awareness and potential.
So your self-image was changed by one sentence or one small conversation with Paul Bragg, and then your heart became open for this vision, and this vision became the pronouncement by your mother of her love and your father's love kind of impelled you, or at least propelled you toward your vision to be a reality. Is that correct?
Yeah, I can thank all the people involved. My life has been blessed by many different people, mentors along the way, and many thousands of books. And I always say that you're here to put your hand in the pot of glue so it sticks, and to stand on the shoulders of giants. So I think I've done everything I could to do that, and I do it every single day. I mean, there's not a day that I don't research, write, travel, and teach just pretty well.
I know those are your top values. You have mentioned that so many times, and I'm really, very, very impressed with that. And I know you also mentioned that values are fingerprint specific. But we're at the World Intuition Summit now, so what I'd like to really go into and is to kind of see what we can explore in the area of intuition. Would that be okay with you?
Absolutely.
All right. So, John, would you agree that as a species now we're coming into a new era of human evolution, that through physics, science, intuition, and philosophy we have moved into a new sort of cosmology? Is that something that you would agree to?
Yeah, it was Vernadsky last century who said that we had a sort of a primitive cellular organisms, bacteria, if you will, that live geologically, and they combined to create multicellular organisms that started a biology on top of the geology, and then that would collectively emerge into higher organisms through emergence, and create sort of a noosphere, as he called it. Beyond the geosphere and the biosphere, he created a noosphere, which is a collective, integrated kind of a consciousness of intelligence that kept emerging. And that keeps expanding. So the sphere of awareness and influence that we as a collective species and individually keeps expanding. And Chardin, in 1955, in The Phenomenon of Man, described Vernadsky's work as expanding and continually expanding until it reaches the omega point, the ultimate harmonization of the human being and the collective conscious on the earth that Jung and many others have described. And so I do believe that we're here continuously expanding and approximating a timeless state of mind where we're present and filled with love.
So this process is this new consciousness. Is this a new consciousness, and which creates a new cosmology? Would you say that this also creates a new cosmology in and of itself?
Well, the cosmology is the study of the universe and the cosmos. So if we stop and think, even 2 centuries ago or a century and a half ago, the perception of the universe was simply the Milky Way. And so now the Milky Way is infinitesimal to the vastness of our universe that we're looking at, even our observable and speculated beyond the observable universe. So yeah, as we probe into the micro with subatomic particle physics, we expand into the astronomical physics. As we approximate the infinite micro with our awareness, we also expand to the infinite awareness, infinite expanded awareness. And so, yeah, I believe that we're in a kind of a continuously expanding micro-macro domain that we're here to master.
So what role does intuition play in this expanded awareness?
Well, I have to develop something to first appreciate that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, please.
So, as I said, and what you reiterated, that every human being lives by a set of priorities, a set of values in their life, and this set of values determines how they see the world, what decisions they make, and what actions they take in the world. And the things that are highest on our values, we spontaneously are inspired from within to act. The things lower in our values, we need motivation and incentives and reminding to act. So the highest values are intrinsic, and they lead to discipline, reliability, focus, and mastery. And the other ones are basically extrinsic, and they are usually where we become victims of history, not masters of destiny. Now, anything that comes along in our perceptions that we feel support that highest value, we open up to. And anything that comes along that challenges the highest value, we tend to close down to. That's our animal nature, whispering through. It's kind of a prey-predator dynamic. We seek that which is food, our prey, and we try to avoid the predator that can eat us. So that inherent animal nature is, in a sense, overridden by this higher state, which Freud called the ego, but others have given different names to it. And the second we live by our highest values and are congruent and inspired from within, we have our power. So anytime we see something that support, we tend to open up to it, we become infatuated with it, we tend to put it on a pedestal, and we become ignorant of the downsides of it. Because if we, for instance, if we see prey and we eat the prey, we don't realize that we can get fat and get health problems from that. And we need the predator to keep us on our toes to not overeat. At the same time, if we see things that challenge our values and we can withdraw and close down to it and put it down in a pit, we need that to keep us active and to become precociously innovative and creative to solve problems. So we need both prey and predator in an ecosystem. The design and the master plan of the intelligence of the universe gave birth to both, because it's been shown biologically that we need both support and challenge equally in order to grow. That's why we have our autonomic nervous system designed to be balanced by these two sides. So anytime we see support without challenge, our intuition steps in to try to point out the side that we're ignoring. And anytime we see challenge without support, our intuition jumps in to try to see the part we're ignoring again. So our intuition is attempting to help us see the whole picture and transform our emotional-based, our animal nature, which is avoiding and seeking, into a whole angelic nature, which is actually in a state of grace, and have equanimity of the mind and equity between our mind and other minds. So our intuition is always trying to reveal to us the side we're ignoring that's unconscious compared to our conscious assumptions and emotional perceptions. It is designed to help us equilibrate the mind, which automatically expands us on a new quantum level and expands our sphere of awareness and influence. So our evolution depends on this intuition to help us go from emotions to inspirations. And it's basically a guiding mechanism to help make us realize what we're ignoring and see the whole picture, not the part.
So is this a fundamental portion of our senses, or is this ethereal, or is it a universal intelligence, or what exactly can we kind of pinpoint it at if we were to take a look at a definition?
Well, I teach, as you know, the program called the Breakthrough Experience about 40 times a year. And as I say in there, that I really believe that there is a divine intelligence, and I'm defining divinity as an emanation or a source of radiant light that basically permeates the universe cosmologically. and it is filled with intelligence. Our technology is approximating what our psychology already knows, and our technology is helping us become aware of what our psychology already knows. And it's approximating the subatomic and the atomic computers where we store the vastness of the entire Internet and beyond. And I believe that our field of intelligence that's surrounding us on the Earth is really already there, and our technology is helping us become aware of it. And just like the Internet is helping us become aware that it's all now, even though we live local locations and we have these so-called time frames, in the Internet it's now. So our mind is basically living in space and time, but our soul is basically now. And so our mind is continually expanding from the geosphere to the noosphere to the soul, or the highest atmosphere. And so our intuition is basically taking all of our incomplete awarenesses and helping us see all the parts we're ignoring and returning to the awareness of our whole. As Schopenhauer says, we become our true self to the degree that we make everything else ourselves. So it's guiding us. So it's leading us to what we could call spirit, which I'd like to think is full quantum awareness or enlightenment. And it's taken us from our emotional animal nature, which is avoiding and seeking and labeling things supportive or challenging, or infatuation, resentment, which are polarized, and synthesizing us and helping us see the synthesis and synchronicity of all complementary opposites, which is really the source and a divine source of intelligence that governs life, the matrix of life.
So is it a divine communication? Would you then, given that what you just gave us, was that a divine communication?
Well, I think that our intuition is helping our mortal mind, which is polarized in time, attune. It is not the divine itself. It is helping us bridge the gap between our mortal and the divine. And the second our intuition brings us back to the center, it's done. It's done its job. And we're now inspired, and we're in a state of grace. We have equanimity and poise and presence and patience, and we're basically purposeful individuals. So I always say that when we have, and if I ask people, let's say people come to the breakthrough experience and they say, I'm really resentful to somebody, and they really challenge me, and I really hate these people. And I go, okay, write down everything you can think that's negative about this person and that you can imagine. And they write down 50 things they dislike about the person. I said, now write all the things that you find attractive and positive about the person. And then they go kind of stumped, and they write maybe 5 or 6 things. And I said, can you see you have an imbalanced ratio of a 10-to-1 ratio, and or maybe an 8-to-1 ratio in your perceptions? They go, yeah. And I said, well, that means that you're blind to the upsides of this person, because the truth is this person's worthy of love, but you're not seeing it. You're only projecting your evaluation and seeing only part of him. Well, your intuition is always attempting to help you see the other side so you can love, to help you awaken your spiritual presence, and to realize that we're all reflections of each other. So anytime you have a lopsided perception, either on the infatuated side or resentful side, where you're seeing more positive negatives or more negatives than positives, your intuition is always trying to reveal the other side to bring you back into balance. And the moment you do, you transcend the emotions of the animal, and you activate the angelic presence, the grace, the inspired state. And so intuition is transforming emotions that are polarized into synthesized inspiration. That's its job, to equilibrate. It's ever present within the mind. It's always present, but we're not always aware of it because we're caught in our emotions and want to be right with our evaluations.
So why is there such a mystery and shrouded mysticism around the whole thing if it's so natural to us? Is it etheric outside of the natural constraints of our body, and we don't experience it, or it's just difficult in interpreting it? Why is it hard to tell the difference between intuition and logic or ego or all those other things, which is the problem most people ask when they start to explore it?
Well, many people at first confuse gut instinct with intuition, and I think that need to be first delineate that. A gut instinct and intuition are not the same thing, although they superimpose on each other at the same time. If you have somebody challenging your values, you have a gut instinct to try to protect you. It's an animal, passionate instinct to protect from that which challenges you. Your impulse is that which is seeking that which supports you. So you have an impulse for things that support your values. You have an instinct from things that challenge your values. That's the prey and the predator. That's an animal behavior. That's down in the gut. That's not in the state of the heart. And that is there whenever we have an imbalanced perspective, when we have a phobia or a philia. But at the same time, if we have a phobia, our intuition is trying to show us the upside to break the phobia itself. So they're simultaneously occurring, but they're two different entities. One is of the passionate animal, the immanent mind, as Immanuel Kant describes, and one is of the transcendent mind. And the transcendent mind, which is the one that has access to the wisdom and inner guidance in whisperings of the soul, is one that's constantly trying to bring equanimity. So our animal nature is trying to avoid pain and seek pleasure, and it's trying to polarize us, but our angelic state is always trying to synthesize us and liberate us from the bondage of the animal nature. So our intuition is the angelic component that's a whispering of the soul down to the mind to try to reveal the parts it's ignoring so it can become whole and realize its magnificence.
Are there boundaries to this kind of a thing? But is it related to the body? Is it just? I mean, I'm still trying to. I understand what you just said, but I'm also trying to see. I mean, how does our body accept this? How do we? Is it just a mental thing that's projected into the mind? I mean, I understand that what it's doing. It's trying to equilibrate everything. But where is it coming from, and how do we know when there's an interpretation here, and whether it's an interpretation or something that is actually coming from this angelic place? I mean, because there's
this angelic place is in modern physics is called entanglement. Entanglement is nothing more than the relationship between complementary opposite particle and antiparticles, as Dirac would describe, and it's the messenger vehicle between the two. That's why they call angels messengers of light. The messenger particle in quantum physics is the same as what the theologians will call the angel. It's a medium, a mediator between complementary opposite particles, regardless of where they are in space, but simultaneously in time. And so our intuition is basically a transcendent field connecting quantum particles that are perceptual charges in the lower aspect of our body that are there. So it's a transcendent mind. It's not necessarily of the body or the brain. It's a transcendent mind. It just happens to use whole-brained functions, particularly right-brained functions, because they're holistic in nature. But it's not the body. It's a transcendent field. So whether we call it an energy, a messenger particle, as a photon, or whether we give it a mystical name, is not really as crucial as it's there, and we have access to it. There's a science on how to awaken it, and that's simply knowing how to ask equilibrating questions of the mind. That automatically strengthens the intuition and allows it to be there for us to guide us.
Give me an example of an equilibrating question.
Okay, so equanimity of the mind means you have a self-governed, telencephalonic equilibrium in the mind. And so what happens is the second you see somebody challenging you, if you look simultaneously at the same time, there'll be somebody supporting you. If you see the challenge without support, you're resentful. If you see the support without the challenge, you're infatuated. If you see them simultaneously, you feel the presence of a higher order that's keeping things in equilibrium, and you feel grateful and loving. That's the transcendent mind. The second you see one or the other, you have the immanent mind. The immanent mind is the animal mind that's stuck in the body and stuck in the brain function. But the transcendent mind is the field that connects all the complementary opposites. Even at the cell level in the brain, the neurons, the redox reactions are complementary pairs of opposites of charge that are going on. They have fields that connect them. That's what allows the cell to organize itself and govern, emerge. The intelligence of the cell is governed that way. So the second we equilibrate the mind, we wake up that intuition and allow us to see the synthesis and synchronicity of these complementary opposites. So knowing how to ask whatever we're perceiving, where is the equal and opposite at the same time, if we look carefully, and I've taken about 250,000 people through it, if they see it, if they look carefully, they'll find that their intuition always knows where it is and where it is in space. And people in martial arts have mastered this, and people that have trained in this exercise are astonishingly able to poise themselves instead of emotionalize themselves all the time. And they have more self-governance and more prudence instead of just reactive decisions, and they end up being more, in a sense, the executive instead of the animal.
So this sounds like it leads into sort of a psychic awareness, into powers and into abilities that are not normally associated with everyday awareness. Like,
well, this synthesis and synchronicity, the moment they're there and we're graced, we activate that what some people call the higher self, where the psychic abilities are. We have to many people confuse psychosis and psychic abilities. Psychosis is when we're perceiving a challenge, and we're dissociating from it and going into a fantasy world. And then true psychic abilities are where we see the synthesis and synchronicity of opposites simultaneously. And in that moment, we access the true clairaudience and clairvoyance and the other powers, the motoricities that we have in our mind. But we won't do that as long as we're in emotions. Emotions sometimes are confused with these powers, but they're not emotional. They're not physical emotional states. You could say that they're our sacred self coming through in a point of equanimity.
So they are a place of neutrality, would you say? There's a neutrality involved in this?
Whenever there's an emotional charge, you have the psychosis. Whenever you have grace, where you see the hidden order in the pairs of opposites that are there, you have now accessed the higher self, the clairaudience. Every weekend in the breakthrough experience, when I take people through the Demartini method, as I help them equilibrate the mind and ask the specific questions, the 48 questions that liberate them from emotions, they access this transcendental state, and they have this clairaudient and clairvoyant experience every time. And they also have the ability to influence people through entanglement phenomenally. I mean, it's reported almost every single week. And these things are demonstratable, reproducible, and people deserve to know about them. So it's not really mystical, unless you want to call that equilibrated state a mystical state. It's because it's reproducible. There's a way of demonstrating it, reproducing it, and we all have it, but we don't all use it.
So it can be approached from the area of science and physics and energy, right? So
I really believe that true science and true religion are the same, and pseudoscience and pseudo-religion like to conflict with each other. But true science and true religion don't fight.
What's pseudoscience and pseudo-religion? I mean, just the energy as opposed to the spirit of it?
Well, see, what happens is in evolution of religious thought from early anthropology to today, we went from first coming from our animal nature. Anything that frightened us, our mind and our right hemisphere would dissociate and create fantasy images that we would create sort of a pseudo-anthropomorphic or pseudo-eurographic gods, pseudo-geographic gods that would then override our perceptions that we're frightened by. So we'd make a god to protect us from the rain when we're frightened of the thunder and the rain. We'd have a god to protect us from the wolves if we had a fear of the wolves. Whatever we were frightened by, we dissociate and create a superimposing power to override our insecurities. And these anthropomorphic emergent parts of our brain are confused with religious experiences, but they're actually psychotic separations in the mind. The true religious experience, the more evolved, is actually when we have a synthesis and synchronicity of the mind. We're not having phobias or fantasy philias. We're actually having these synchronicities. This one activates the connection to the matrix, the higher the divine order that's showing that everything is in order, and anything we're still frightened of or fantasied or infatuated with is still our illusion. So we have to go and not to confuse the human-invented religions of the world, which are basically subordinate to things that we're frightened of and trying to run from our fears into our fantasies to protect us. It's a religion of protection instead of honor and realization that there's already a divine order, there's nothing to be frightened of. And then there's a higher level of true religiosity, as Albert Einstein said, which is when you humble yourself to the intelligence that permeates the universe and you see that it's all in order and you're grateful. There's nothing to be frightened of, nothing to be seeking or avoiding. It's just something to be present with. That's a higher religious comprehension.
Wow. And so what's the role of the imagination in all this? Because it seems to play a role on both sides of this. So,
well, there's a difference between imaging and imagination. Imagination and memory are of the mind, and they store our illusions until we're ready for truth. And then when we're truly in synchronicity and in a synthesis and our mind is equilibrated, we have presence, and we have images that are present that don't have time. If your mind is in time, it's storing illusions. So many people have confused this imaging of the present, where we're actually feeling that it's already done, and the imagination of the future, where we're storing usually fantasies or nightmares. Because I've done research on this over and over for, 40 years now, that we store, every one of our emotions are stored in the form of memory and imagination. William James described this. He said you can never have memory without imagination or imagination without memory, because both are trying to get you present in the mind. And whenever we have emotions, we're automatically oscillating in time. We're storing our memories as nightmares or fantasies and creating our imagination as fantasies or nightmares to compensate. But the second we become equilibrated in the mind and have equanimity and self-governance, we automatically don't have memory or imagination. We just have presence. It's all now. And we're living at it as if it's done. Our innermost dominant thought now becomes our outermost tangible reality. And whatever we're striving for, if you will, that word even dissolves. We're now in it, and we're now realizing it's impossible for us not to fulfill whatever it is that we're having in our mind at that moment. That's the power of Creator. That's where we actually have the magic, the mystical components that really prophetically manifest.
This actually is affecting matter, space, and time all simultaneously, or it's just or it's something that happens and then in terms of the intuition or the presence of it, and then it affects according to what that moment is to the next portion of the matter, space, and time that we move into. Is it something that everything manifests all at once, or is it something that
well, it's all now ultimately in actuality. But what happens is with our perceptions, if we perceive something supporting our highest values, and we see pleasure without pain, infatuate. Because of that polarity, that's like a positron, and a positron has a charge and a mass that has gravity. And if we see resentment and things that challenge our values, again, we have an antiparticle, an electron that's charged negatively that also has mass and charge and occupies space and time. And these two Pauli exclusion principle physics have gravity. And therefore, when we have emotions, we have gravity. We weigh ourselves down. We call it emotional baggage. That's why people that have lower socioeconomics, that have less reflective awareness, have a higher gravida, which is fertility, and grave, which is mortality, because they have a shorter lifespan, because they think in terms of immediate gratifications, like the animal. But the person who's able to synthesize and synchronize their emotions and become graced by the divine love that's ever present in the matrix, they transcend these states, and they transform gravity into radiation, or matter into energy, as Einstein would call it, in his equivalency principle. And they basically able to have radiation and radiate our love and our appreciation and expand our sphere of awareness and influence in the world. And now our newest sphere becomes our outer atmosphere, our soul sphere, you might say. And we go explore the cosmos with our own being and presence.
Wow, I love that. That's really a great explanation of that, John. Awesome. So then, really, is there a connection between reality, our particular realities, individual realities, or a greater reality to this whole process and intuition, and all of us in the center of this balanced equilibrium? What is it?
Well, our reality, I define reality in the breakthrough experience as our reality is that which we realize by our senses. It's an empirical thing that we filter and we evaluate by our values, because our values filter our reality. If our highest values are children, then we'll see children's items in the mall. If our highest value is business and entrepreneurship, we'll see business materials in the mall. So we're constantly finiting and filtering our reality with selective biased attention, and therefore we're seeing reality. But actuality transcends that. It's a synthesis of all of our views. All of our realities are synthesized, and all complementary opposite value systems that see complete opposites in the world are synthesized in the matrix, which make love. And so actuality is the divine order that's love in the matrix that's here, but our realities are on a journey of waking up to it. And the moment our intuition is active and it brings us back into equilibrium, we transform reality into actuality, and we become present. We don't live in the vicissitudes of imagination and memory or fantasies and nightmares. We become present, and it's all created now to us.
Is this also holographic by nature?
Well, as Prima many years ago described in his book, and Shuffle Brain by Paul Peach, they talked about the holographic idea, and even Wheeler at Institute of Advanced Studies described the possibility of an entangled holographic universe. I'm a believer that that's the case. Every weekend in the breakthrough experience, I see evidence of it. So I would have to say that's a great image. I like to think of as our soul as the source. Well, the divine is the source of the light for the hologram. Our soul is basically a beam splitter. Our mind then comes in and resonates with a particle in the atmosphere. It then beams off that down into an earth form where another direct beam hits, and it creates a holographic image of us, you might say. So we're, in a sense, a holographic image manifestation of a great mind.
What is the connection to the entanglement again?
Well, anytime we have an emotion, we're seeing one side of an entangled pair. Paul Dirac, when he described these particle antiparticles, he said for every particle there'd be an antiparticle. And so, when he came along that, we found that. Yokawa and Anderson and them found the positron to match the electron, which is what we use in particle accelerators today. These two particles play with each other, just like two photons are entangled and relate to each other. And so too in the mind, we have sort of an entangled game. We never have depression without a comparison of our current reality to a fantasy that we're elated with. And as long as we have one, we've got the other. But our mind is tending to select to one and omitting the other. And our intuition's always trying to transcend our emotions and help us break through our illusions of depression or elation or nightmares and fantasies and bring us into the whole and say, thank you, I love you. Because that's it. If we had only 24 hours to live, we would all say, thank you, I love you. And that's what we all want. So really the whole game of intuition is trying to help us transcend all the judgments and evaluations of the terrestrial world where trials occur and help us get to the celestial expanded awareness where we say, thank you, I love you, which is grace.
And that thank you, I love you, is that the oneness? Would you call that?
Well, that's the key. I always say gratitude is the key that opens up the gateway of the heart. And inside the heart is love, and the love comes radiating out, and it window washes the mind and brings inspiration to the mind and enthusiasm to the body. And then what we do is we're now walking, even we're in the world, but we're not of the world. We're transcendent. And now we're basically masters, not neophytes, living radiantly instead of gravitantly.
And in the transcendence, so we now awaken other portions of our power, the ability to precognate, the ability to have clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentientness, claircognizance, to see past lives and things like that. What's the relation there? Can you?
Well, the second we have an equilibrated mind, we access these powers because in the equilibrated mind, there's no separations in space-time. So we're aware of it now. As Plato said in his 2,400 years ago almost, he basically said that all learning is recollection. We're recollecting all the ignored parts that our intuition are now revealing to us and trying to awaken us up to our divine nature, which is whole in actuality, and not be caught in our little realizations of our evaluating world in the terrestrial sphere.
Okay, so can you kind of, if you would, sort of take us through something here, because we're really onto something here in the way that you've explained this. So we have an intuitive consciousness, we have a wholeness consciousness, a psychic consciousness in this process. Are there patterns of vibrations, right? They're all just patterns of vibrations.
Well, ultimately, if we imagine this from a cosmological game, as our technology started in the 40s and 50s, our computers were big clunkers. And by the time the 60s and 70s came along, they started to be, sizable, the size of a room. Then they became, the PC started in the 80s. So every decade, the computer and the chips that they're made out of, the transistors, you might say, are getting smaller and smaller until now we're down into a polyatomic level, and soon the qubits and the atomic level. When we do, our computers get more vastly capacitated, and as a result of it, they'll eventually get to the single atom computer with spintronics and even quantum relationships between the nucleus and the electrons. When we do, we'll realize that the entire internet that we know today is sitting inside an atom. At that moment that we come to that realization, we realize that the quantum field that surrounds the Earth with cosmic particles, which are nuclei and subatomic particles and mesons and even quarks, etc., these things are permeating the Earth and giving us information, and we're basically awakening to that. But our technology is just slowly getting us to be prepared for that realization. As even Wolfgang Pauli, when he discussed this with Jung, he said that he believed that nuclei were the cores of our own nature, the nuclei of atomic structures. And I think that deep inside that we're really resonating with subatomic or atomic levels. And the second we awaken to ourselves, we get to tune to those vibrations. And they scan around the Earth. They have a resonant field around the Earth based on their mass and their degree of vibration. They resonate around the Earth. And so as we expand our sphere of awareness, we're attuning to higher rays or higher frequencies of cosmic particles. So we're basically cosmic beings. As Mani in the 3rd century said in his Manichaeism, there were particles of light resonating with matter, manifesting in form to teach us to love.
That's quite a pronouncement. So are there different kinds of attunements to come into the more subtle energies and the more subtle frequencies?
Well, just like there's a periodic table, we now have, since Mendeleev started compiling the periodic table, and now we've composed most of it, and now we're looking at the transuranic elements all the way up to 118, and now we're looking at the subatomic periodic table, and now soon we're going into even smaller ones. We're looking at preon tables that are basically making up quarks and some of the leptons inside the quantum world. There are periodic tables within periodic tables, and someday there'll be even more periodic tables that are more subtle. And as we do, we'll get into the field of understanding. We're storing information there. These quantum entangled pairs of opposites at very subtle levels store vast amount of information. And we're basically cosmic beings connecting to this. And our job is to keep intuitively listening to our intuition, to equilibrate our minds, to become inspired, to solve new mysteries and create new problems, solve those, and go on to new mysteries, and keep growing and expanding on the great deep, as William James and even Emerson said, and keep expanding until we realize our greatest potential, even at a galactic level or possibly beyond.
You are listening to Dr. John Demartini. I know that we're restricted on time. We're going to go to the offer now, but what I want you guys to know is that we're going to stay on with our speaker afterwards for a number of minutes or maybe even a half hour after we present the offer, because we have a lot more to talk about. But I just want to, in the interest of time, make sure that everybody knows what this special offer is that we're going to be presenting today. So, awesome. Please stay with us. Stay with us through the offer, and then afterwards, if you have time and you can, we'll probably do another anywhere between a few minutes into a half hour or so. Thanks for staying with us. So can you tell us a little bit about what you've put together for us for the World Intuition Summit?
I just spoke to the Success Summit this week with Steve Wozniak and the guy from the Wolf guy from that new movie that's come out. And people said, I learned more in an hour from you than I did from the rest of the conference for 2 days. And because I'm like drinking from a fire hydrant. But I do have some products that if people want to hear more of me or whatever, endure me more, I have a program called Activating Genius and Potential. And this is basically on how to access genius. It's the science of activating genius and potential. I use that. They just gave me the entire country of all the teachers in the country to teach this to. I just did another 160 principles the other day, and they've given me now the country in South Africa to teach this to, because they've gone from 27 matric pass rate to 97 in some areas of rural Africa because of it. So it's a really powerful audio program that's basically $50 that's there. Then I have another one that's called Epigenetics and Neuroplasticity. This is how our thinking and our perceptions alter our brain according to our value systems and how it works, and how we literally have the ability to remodel our brain and actually have it wake up its genius and in its state of intuition and grace. Then I have another one called Conscious Intent, and that was $50 also. It's a CD. Then there's Conscious Intention, which is the material. They filmed me for The Secret for 7.5 hours, but I was only in there for 2 minutes. So this is the other material that was taken out. And this is basically called Conscious Intention. It's a DVD, and that was $40. Then I have another one called Personifying the Quantum Theory. This is I did at a conference to physicists and psychologists on taking the mind and actually relating to it in quantum theory. This is a DVD. It's about $40. And then I got the Infinite Wisdom of Love. And this is a cosmological presentation I did in Mexico City to about 2,300 people at the World Trade Center there. It's an inspirational video. It's in multiple languages. It's me and the essence of my philosophy in relating to the intuition and the soul and the mind.
John has graciously allowed us to combine them into a single product for you for $197, if you guys can believe that. I mean, the value of this has got to be so many multiple times that what value can you place on changing your life? What value can you place on awakening your genius? My God. So the website that what you guys want to come to is www.theworldintuition.com/Demartini, and that's spelled D-E small m, not a big M, but D-E-M-A-R-T-I-N-I, D-E-M-A-R-T-I-N-I, and that is lowercase. So it's theworldintuitionsummit.com/Demartini. You guys got to go get this. I mean, this is an awesome conversation that we have had here, and I'm sure, with even further instructions and further, insights in the way this process works, which is really spans the whole realm of universal acceptance of understandings of just all these number of different kinds of things that we have mystery and magic around. When we start to explore these kinds of things and ask the right questions, do the right processes, and see the right kinds of things that help us come to this place of pure, true, divine love, and all the other experiences that we've just been talking about, just in whatever definition, the process becomes a cosmology, and it becomes a integrated system of the whole, and that integrated system of the whole is where we all want to be, because that's the most pleasant thing a human being can do, is be in their wholeness, be in everything. And then it becomes beyond the pleasance of the human being, it becomes the pleasance of the divine being, at least in my experience. So, John, it's www.theworldintuitionsummit.com/Demartini, small lowercase DEMARTINI. We'll get this package for only $197. If you guys don't get excited by this, you guys don't have a pulse. Okay, so let's continue on. Can you give us some sort of an exercise that helps us come into an attunement?
All I can say is that, I teach the Demartini method, and it's a method of 48 questions that help us equilibrate the mind and bring equanimity to the mind and equity between our mind and other minds. And so the first question I always say is, whenever something happens to you that you have an emotion about, that you're either infatuated or resentful to, the only reason is you're putting them on pedestals or pits, and is because you're too humble to admit what you see in them is inside you. You're either too humble if you're putting them on a pedestal, or too proud if you're putting them in a pit. And the real truth is the seer, the seeing, and the seen are always the same. So it's wise to ask a wise question by saying, how specifically, and where specifically, and when specifically do I do what I see in these people? And own the trait, and keep digging and finding where you do and when you do everything that you see in them until you realize that you're a reflection, and whatever they've done, you've done. When you have perfect reflection.
Well, you can't see anything in this world that isn't a portion.
It's all you.
Yeah, it's all you.
I went through the Oxford Dictionary, 4,628 traits. I went through each page, circled every trait that human behavior could demonstrate. I asked who is the most extreme example of anybody I've heard in history that has that trait. I then asked where and when do I demonstrate that trait until I've owned it as much as the most extreme example of hero and villain on the planet. And I realized there was nothing missing in me. As the Bonpo Lama said in Nepal to me when we were chatting, he says, nothing's missing in the universe. It's only the human mind that thinks things are missing, which creates the voids that then create the values that make him search for his own being.
Well, how did that all come about then? Why, if nothing has ever been missing and we are perfect, we are in the perfection of all things, why would something like that even come about?
Because the best way to learn something, the best way to create star people is to go learn how to create a star.
Right.
We're basically on this planet. I have a course that I teach on cell physiology and the origin of life. It's about 800 pages, 2 volumes, text that I've written on this, and on the possible origins of life in the universe. And I really believe that someday, as we learn all the further ologies that we are here to learn, we'll eventually figure out how this divine intelligence is working, and we'll be part of the creation process. So we're on the planet to learn how to create this system that we're observing, and to realize that there's nothing missing in us. We have the power to do so, but we have to wake it up. Just like the prodigal son that leaves home and doesn't appreciate the father and the mother until he goes away and tries to recreate the life, eventually comes home to realize how graced it was. So, too, we are basically created, in a sense, and emerged into manifestation to help us realize our magnificence. But first we have to know our insignificance to appreciate our magnificence.
So give us something specific that we can actually do or realize in the moment that will take us to a space where we can.
Well, anything that you think has got a positive spin or a negative spin on it that you're infatuated or resentful to, in addition to owning the traits in yourself, it's wise to go and find out the other side. So if you see if you're infatuated, what's the downside? This strengthens your intuition. If you're resentful, what's the upside? This strengthens your intuition. In addition to that, whenever somebody does something you're infatuated or resentful to, go and find out where somebody is doing the opposite. If you close your eyes and get really present and get context specific and identify where and when this occurred, your mind, with its intuition, will reveal the other side, and you'll realize there's never been an event in your life that's not love. There is nothing but love. The synthesis and synchronous of all complementary opposites.
Love it.
That's all there is.
That is awesome, John. I love the way that you've explained that.
The illusion of the emotions are letting you know what you haven't loved and giving you an opportunity to intuitively wake up to the love that's there.
But even if the illusion is that there's not love, if there's anger, there's conflict, there's disappointment, those things are love, and they're all in the perfection.
They're all part of love. Look, if you're addicted to praise, you're going to attract reprimands and criticisms to help break your addiction, which keeps you juvenilely dependent. You're not here to get supported without challenge. You're not here to get the positive without the negative. You're here to embrace both. You're not here to get rid of half of yourself to love yourself. You're here to embrace the hero and the villain, the saint, the sinner, the virtue, and the vice, all within you.
Right. But that doesn't mean you have to act on all those things. You don't.
No, you're here to act on all of them. You know, when I look at myself and I've looked honestly, I found I've done them all. I've been nice and mean and kind and cruel and giving and taking and stingy and generous and honest and dishonest and, I mean, pleasant and unpleasant and, you know, I've been everything. And all of them have served me and served other people when they look at the big picture. It's when if we have the overview effect and stand from an astronomical view and look back at the earth, we realize that all of our judgments of ourselves and others are trivia.
Right. So all judgment is trivia in one form or another, for sure. And so the perspective is, the giant perspective from 30,000 feet up is that, you know, we are all in this intelligent field of open space, which is really filled with the divine presence of grace, right? So.
Well, I think that when the second we get a glimpse, our intuition is trying to help us get a glimpse of the divine presence and the divine love and the divine magnificence and the divine order and the divine grace that we're all accessing here and here to access. But we deny it. We keep running our little animal nature and keep identifying with our id, as Freud described, that's always trying to avoid pain and seek pleasure. As the Buddha says, the desire for that which is unavailable, which is the prey and pleasure and fantasy, and the desire to avoid that which is unavoidable, which is the pain and the nightmare and the frustration. And these two things are the source of human suffering. So as long as we are caught in the web of the illusion of seek and avoid, we're not transcending the illusion of our motor nature. We have to be able to see beyond that and see that within the pleasure is the pain, and within the pain the pleasure, and they're inseparable and they both make love, as C.S. Lewis described.
So I know that, you know, you have had tremendous success in waking people up into all these realities and into all the expansion of themselves, of their own magnificence. So can you give us a couple of, you know, really a couple of your favorite success stories in this that you'd like to kind of share with us for you know, the process and for whatever it is that you'd like to share with us as an overall projection of what we're talking about?
Well, you know, I think I had a gentleman who is here in South Africa. I'm here in South Africa at the moment, who is involved in politics, and he's got like 17 companies. He's like a little Richard Branson in this country. And he was getting, you know, challenged and nailed by media and kind of attacked by the media because he was doing big deals, and they were, you know, they were giving some hard time. And he came for a consult, and I said, okay, so what exactly is going on? And he said, well, I'm being attacked by this and this and this and the media and this and that. And I said, great, so let's identify who the attacker is, and let's define how you feel about it, and let's define your perception of it, and then let's go find out who is doing exactly the opposite. And he goes, well, what do you mean the opposite? And I said, well, let's look. You don't ever get challenged without support. You never get criticism without praise. You never get rejection without acceptance. There is never one-sided events. The divine matrix always maintains love. If we don't see it, we're all emotional. When we do see it, we're graced. So he sat there and did 79 examples of wherever he was criticized, who was praising him. Whenever it was somebody who was rejecting him, who was honoring him. And he did 79 of them in 3 hours. We sat down and knocked them out. And when he was done, he said, there's nothing to fix. I said, no, there never is. There's nothing out of order. He goes, there's nothing, I'm thankful. I said, great. He started crying. He realized that everything that was going on was part of a higher order, and they were necessary. If you're not willing to be the villain, you're not willing to be the hero. You've got to be able to be both in the perceptions of people, because there's a complementation. In sociology, they know that there's a law of heuristic escalation. And in this law, it states that whatever somebody's dedicated to, there'll be an equal and opposite force on the nature trying to counterbalance it to keep equilibrium going. And so what we're doing is we're realizing that that's what gives us power to go to another level. If we can't embrace both sides of our nature, we limit ourselves to the side that we're not willing to embrace. But he basically embraced all of them, and he's moved on to do even greater things. He's done amazing things, built incredible organizations, because he's no longer now frightened or phobic or philic, trying to avoid or seek. He's now graced by that understanding. So that's a case of what happens when you wake up that intuition and wake up that inspired grace state.
And there is, but you know, we're really, so you're transcending the polarity, the dualism, but you have to acknowledge the dualism in order to transcend it. Is that correct?
Well, it's not about, it's starting with the illusion of the senses and transcending the physical senses and accessing the clairaudient and clairvoyant capacities to know there's always an opposite side. That's what our intuition is trying to do, is let us know that there is nothing but love.
Well, this is a very simple way to take a look at it, is that if we see one thing, then we know there's always an opposite, and that, we shouldn't get stuck in one of the things, because then that always brings us back to 0-point neutrality.
0-point neutrality. But the thing is if we even think with our emotions and then just try to analyze it with our head, it won't do it. We actually have to get present with our misperception and actually in that moment find out where the equal and opposite is in a moment of synchronicity, and access that other side. And the moment we see both sides, they both dissolve. And then we just transcended it and made a quantum leap into a new field and vibrational level, new resonation to see things from a higher overview effect.
So what does it take to get present in that way?
You are automatically present to the degree that you see the synchronicity and synthesis of complementary opposites. That is actually what brings present. You can't have presence when you're polarized with emotion. Emotions will not allow you to be present. It's only the grace of love that gives you presence.
Okay, so when are emotions a good thing?
I don't label emotions good things other than they reveal to us the side that we're ignoring. See, I always say that there's feelings, there's 4 magical feelings that are synthesized. That's true grace, true divine love, true inspiration, and the body, the feeling inside the body, the enthusiasm inside the body, which some people confuse with excitement, but it's actually different. It's a poised state. It's a very present poised state. And then there are emotions, which are feelings that are polarized. So emotions are polarized feelings, and gratitude, love, inspiration, enthusiasm are synthesized feelings. The lower polarized ones are of the animal nature. The synthesized ones are of the angelic nature. Those feelings give us awakening. The others are keeping us asleep with the emotions. So some people confuse emotions with feelings, but actually emotions are polarized feelings, and the other ones are synthesized feelings. They're 2 different states.
That was a great success story, too, and that's good. This is amazing stuff, and I really want to have John back to talk about intention. I want to have him talk about, the access to other kinds of genius processes within us. So, but John, I want to thank you for coming on today. You have any sort of parting words that you want to give to our audience today?
Sure. All I can say is that no matter what you've done or not done, you're worthy of love to whoever's listening, and that no matter what you've done or not done, you're participating in the matrix. There is a divine matrix. There is a divine intelligence. There is a divine perfection, and you can't screw it up. So whatever it is, it's on the way, not in the way. All of it's instructive, not obstructive, and it's all helping you become master of your destiny, not some victim of history. So give yourself permission to do something extraordinary by being the most magnificent you, an authentic and inspired, high-valued, focused individual that you're designed to be. That's the true you.
I love that. Give yourself permission to be the master of everything, to be master of you and all planes that you have any desire to enter. So that is amazing. It is the magnificence of you. It is the magnificence of all of us together, and we're all in this together. There are no exceptions. We at the World Intuition Summit affirm your potential, affirm your magnificence, just as John has just done. We affirm everything about you, and we affirm the grace and the wonder of all the things that you desire, including the fact that they are all you anyway. So it's all very cool. Thank you, John Demartini, Dr. John Demartini, for gracing us with your presence today. It has been awesome, as always. I love to talk with you. These are conversations I could have forever, really.
Well, thank you, Harrison. It's great to have the questions, great to be able to dialogue and hopefully make a difference in somebody's life.
I definitely will make a difference. I want you guys to go out there and get this. You know how much information there is out there for this to change your experience. It's not just the information. It's to change your experience. So we are all behind all that. So again, thank you, John. Thank you guys for coming today. It's awesome. theworldintuitionsummit.com/Demartini. Come and get your stuff from John Demartini, get your stuff from all the great speakers that we have, but I definitely want you to come to this one with John Demartini. You will be amazed, and your life will change, and your experiences will have tremendously higher and stronger value in terms of your own magnificence. So thanks, John. Thanks, everybody, for coming.
Thank you.